Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. Last time we left off with the Republican triumph, talking about the election of 1860 and the Republicans' victory in said election. But we are now on to Abraham Lincoln, the new man from the West. Abraham Lincoln was born in Kentucky in 1809. He was not the only American president to rise from humble beginnings. In fact, he was ever since Jackson's time, this has been more of the rule than the exception. But at first, Lincoln did not seem to have much prospect of, for success. His father was a typical wandering pioneer, never long settled in any place. Abraham's home was a log cabin. His schooling almost non-existent. From Kentucky, the family moved to Indiana, and then to Illinois. Lincoln read incessantly, studied law, and became a popular local lawyer, nicknamed Honest Abe, and the Rail Splitter. He was elected to one term in Congress, the highest office he filled before the presidency. He vied for a senatorship with Stephen A. Douglas, who defeated him. In those days, senators were still chosen by the state legislature. But their debates attracted national attention. Up to his point, he could well be described in the words of the poet Stephen Vincent Benet. The small-town lawyer, the crude small-town politician. State character, but comparative failure at 40. In spite of ambition enough for 20 Caesars, honestly rare as a man without self-pity. Kindness as large and plain as a prairie wind, and a self-confidence like an iron bar. Lincoln was an anti-slavery man, but no abolitionist. He thought that there was no constitutional power to forbid slavery in the states, but he wanted to keep it out of all territories and hoped that it might wither on the vine in the few older states which still held to it. Personally, Lincoln was a paradox. A tall, lean, lanky man, apparently awkward and unsystematic, inexperienced in high public office, ill at ease in his store clothes. He had the keenest insight into the popular mind of any man of his time. Famous as a jester and teller of good stories, his most marked personal trait was a constitutional melancholy, almost suicidal in his early days. Lincoln had to wait in the wings, unable to act, for the 4 months before his inauguration. In the meantime, President Buchanan did nothing. It must be admitted that Buchanan's position was difficult. He would either have to permit the secession of such states as chose to break away from the Union, or present the new administration with a war. His party had been defeated, and he was, as the phrase goes, a lame duck president. When he took office, Lincoln did 2 things. He appointed a strong cabinet of national leaders and was not afraid to include some of his own rivals for the nomination. He made a conciliatory inaugural address, inviting the seceding states to have a second thought and return. All right, that's there for that. But yeah, Lincoln is a very interesting man. Obviously, he is anti-slavery, but not abolitionist. He's more of a anti-slavery man of his time. He's actually a very typical view. He has very typical views. A lot of what Lincoln thought would probably be considered very awful today, but back then it wasn't necessarily. Um, just how times have changed, right? But yeah, obviously Lincoln is known for a lot of things. He was a mail boy, a mailman at one point. When he was younger, that's where the top hat, at least that's where the story where it comes from. That he used to deliver mail in the top hat. Um, just made a tall man even taller, you know. Doesn't have any facial hair for most of his life, actually. But obviously, we all know of him with facial hair. And there's a story of a little girl writing to him saying, um, oh, you look a little better with some whiskers. I shouldn't necessarily write to him. They met. And she said, he'd look a little bit better with some whiskers. So when he arrives at the White House, he's starting to grow his hair out. But, of course, Lincoln is a very smart man, probably one of the best political people we've ever had, which is interesting because really he wasn't, he didn't hold much political office before. He held one term as a representative, but that's about it. He doesn't really have much compared to a lot of people. He's a lawyer, which might have some, but yeah, he's very, very interesting man. It's always interesting to hear more. He was also a very good boxer. Um, Another thing that is like so weird about him, Yeah, he liked to box. But yeah, one thing I'll mention here because I talked about it a little bit is James Buchanan. James Buchanan is kind of a lamed up president. They are correct. But the one good thing that James Buchanan did do is he didn't accept the secession of the South. For all the faults of James Buchanan, and there are many, he did not accept the seceding of the South because it wasn't constitutional. They weren't allowed to. But if, let's say, um, his administration had accepted it, there's a different story potentially there. So, who knows? But now we'll get into the photos. In the top left here, Lincoln's birthplace was a log cabin near Hodgenville, 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 Kentucky. The cabin at the Lincoln Birthplace Historical Site is a replica of the one in which he was born. Soon after he was nominated for the presidency, he wrote an autobiography which began, Abraham Lincoln was born the 12th of February, 1809. Then in Hardin, now in the more recently formed county of LaRue, Kentucky. His father, Thomas, and grandfather, Abraham, were born in Rockingham County, Virginia, whither their ancestors had come from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. His lineage had been traced no farther back than this. At the top right here, the fifth debate between Lincoln and Douglas was held at Galesburg, Illinois, on the 7th of October, 1858. The platform on which they spoke was erected at the east end of Knox College. The students decorated the college with flags, streamers, and a large banner bearing the words Knox College for Lincoln. Yeah, and technically Lincoln obviously loses this. The state decides on Douglas, but does make him very much more popular. Douglas was still very popular too. Don't get misled there, but um, this makes Lincoln much more popular. It's kind of one of the reasons he becomes president. At the bottom here is Lincoln the Rail Splitter. When Lincoln was but 8 years old, he had enough strength to swing an axe. Once again, are these stories true? Hard to say, but 8 years old being able to swing an axe, it's not that crazy to think. Obviously, they're talking about a wood splitting axe too, so it's a little bit heavier in the head. But yeah, it's not impossible or really that crazy to think that Lincoln could have done this. Um, like I said later, he was a boxer. He was a pretty strong man. He probably could have. Hard to know though. Probably not good for you at 8. Just gonna be honest with you. at the above here is Lincoln's law office in Springfield, Illinois. In 1858 was above the store at the end of the block. As Lincoln was leaving Springfield in 1861 for Washington to be inaugurated, he noticed a signboard at the foot of the steps of his building. It advertised the firm of Lincoln and his partner, William H. Herndon. He said, "Let it hang there undisturbed. Give our clients to understand that the election of a president makes no change in the firm of Lincoln and Herndon." Yeah, you can see. Now, once again, is this story true? Who knows? You know, these are all a lot of these become more myth than fact, but it's once again not impossible that it happened, but who really knows. And at the right here, the inauguration of Abraham Lincoln as the 16th President of the United States on the 4th of March, 1861. Look at all the people there. Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. But yes, this will obviously lead to the secession of the South. And, well, as I'll give you a little preview for tomorrow usually, but you can see the South secedes. But that's for tomorrow. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you have any ways that can improve these videos, leave a comment down below. I just appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.